Okay, fantastic. Let's get started. Hello,
Hello.
Martin.
Hello.
Welcome to Accounting OS. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
We want to spend the first 20, 15 minutes basically getting to know you, your story. Why do you do what you do? What motivates you? And then we'll spend the rest of the episode getting to know your business. Who do you hire? How do you hire? What are the values that you employ? What's the technology that you have in your business? And where do you see the future of your business going? And the advice that you can share back with our audience. How's that
Okay,
sound?
that sounds good. Yeah.
All right.
But
Do you want to go
first,
first?
yeah, what's your story?
So, Optimum Tax has been in existence for 22 years. Set it up in 2004. I was working for a company of corporate financial advisors, and the company came to an insolvent end, and suddenly we were told that we didn't have jobs anymore. And I decided to set up on my own, and that was very much encouraged by a group of consultants at the firm I was working with who were very keen to carry on using my services and were very kindly prepared to pay a service fee, a retainer to me, to have ongoing access to me. And that sort of set my business off very nicely. It meant that I could continue a regular income that I'd got used to. I'd been employed for 13 years prior to that, and I managed to get my income up to its previous level within 3 months of starting the business, which is, I think my wife was very relieved about that, with mortgage payments and school fees and things like that to pay. So yeah, it was forced upon me, I guess.
Yeah.
What was the transition like?
It was quite hard. I mean, suddenly you're working out of a spare bedroom, with no colleagues around you. This is obviously the days before home working was a thing, and so it did take a while to get used to. But I think one of the things I really enjoyed in those early days was being at home with my young children at the time, whereas a lot of people wouldn't have had such good access to their children if working in an office. And so I really did enjoy helping with the school runs and just being around the kids more, reading them a bedtime story and that sort of thing. So that was really nice. And I mean, when you're building a business, you're not necessarily full on busy the whole time. Yes, you're looking for new business, but there's not as much work to be done during the day, so you do have a bit more spare time. So you start to look after yourself a bit more. Maybe a bit more fitness, more time with the kids. So it feels quite good as long as you've got some income coming in those early stages. It feels a pretty good place to be.
So the business went insolvent. You had to, as you described it, it was forced upon you. What was going through your head during those first couple of months? Because I can say with relative confidence, when I've met other people in exactly that situation, it feels like an absolute storm of emotion. What was it like for you?
Yeah, it was quite scary. So I chose February 24. I chose the worst month to put in the biggest expenses claim that I had. I was flying around all over the country, driving. I had mileage claims and well over £1,000 worth, and that just wasn't paid. It was a scary time. I think my wife was probably scared a bit more than I was.
Yeah.
But necessity is the mother of invention, isn't it? You can either sort of cowl and go into a shell, or you can say, well, look, this is an opportunity. Let's give it a go. I'm so grateful to the consultants that encouraged me, and I kind of they told me how good I was, and that gave me the confidence to say, well, actually, maybe I have got something here. I think what they liked was that, I mean, tax can be a very technical subject, and you start quoting section numbers and legislation, and a lot of people glaze over and they struggle to understand it. And I think my secret over the years, and what the consultants that encouraged me to set up on my own enjoyed, was the fact that I could explain things in more layman terms that were more understandable.
Have you always had that skill?
I suppose that the skill wasn't really tested until I had to actually find the skill. So I think previous roles, I didn't have as much client facing interaction. So so suddenly I was in a world where I was interacting very directly with clients, and I had to sort of find out the best way of how do I explain these very technical concepts to people who understandably wouldn't necessarily know section numbers and things like that. So I had to learn pretty quickly to get the point over to clients, and very often that was quite bluntly to encourage them to work with me. If I'm telling them stuff in not a very understandable way, then they're less likely to work with me. So you kind of you really had to put things over in a way that was understood, so that they could go, you know what, I understand this guy. No one's ever spoken about tax in this way before.
What do you tend to avoid in those sorts of situations? So imagine I am, a client who's coming in. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed and I want some help with some tax advice. I don't know anything about it. I'm starting off from basically scratch. It's always easy to say this is what you should do, but what would you do in that situation and avoid doing? What's the no-nos? What's the boundaries that you set? For example, it could be, let's make sure I don't reference any specific code, because that tends to overwhelm people and say section 2.158 says this. People tend to get overwhelmed by that.
That's a great point. How do you simplify it put it in layman terms?
Yeah. What does that look like?
So I think we're in an initial sort of meeting stage. It's very much, you've got two ears and one mouth. So a lot of it is listening to that client or the potential client, and listening to where their pressure points are, where their pain points are, where their frustrations are. And, having, been in the industry for over 30 years, knowing that there are solutions for many of these problems that people find with taxation. So I think it's very much about listening to the client initially, and then kind of be in an empathetic way, try and explain some of the solutions to them, without necessarily giving complete advice at the time. I think some people are a bit too quick to immediately advise, you should do this, you should do that. You've really got to get to know your client first. Know what their risk profile is, know how aggressive they would like to get with taxes, and then take it from there.
Did you find that there was a gap in the market, especially when you were working in the corporate setting? Was there not as much tax advice given, or did you find there wasn't enough?
I think if you think at the time, it was 2004. We had a Labour government that was starting to, get its feet under the table, and they were starting to put in place some fairly aggressive tax raising measures, and I think that started to focus a lot of individuals and business owners' minds. Suddenly they were starting to suffer higher rates of tax, and I think that demand it increased the demand for some proactive tax advice. And so I think probably it was the economic environment around me that created a lot of that demand for what I was talking about.
Talk to us about your business. So you have been a tax advisor for far longer than you've been a practice owner. What made you want to get into accounting?
So I graduated from Exeter University in 1988, and in the autumn of 1987, we had the Black Monday, which is a big stock market crash in the UK, and I did actually want to work in the city, and I wanted to be a high-flying investment advisor, stockbroker, but when I graduated in the summer of '88, unless you were well connected and you knew someone, it was very difficult to get a job in the city. So I kind of thought, well, what else should I have a look at? And I wanted to work with money. I was interested in money, and so I thought, well, maybe let's have a go at accountancy. So I went for some interviews, and I got two offers, and one offer was for me to do my chartered accountancy and then go on and do my tax exams.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other offer was to do my tax exams first and then do chartered accountancy. Being an impoverished student at the time, I decided to take the higher salary offer, which was where I had to do my tax exams first and then my chartered exams afterwards. Unfortunately, unfortunately, I took so long over my tax exams because they are probably the most hideous, complex exams you could ever think of. I took too long over those, and by the time I'd passed my chartered tax exams, I was fed up with learning, and so I decided to quit.
What are those exams like? How would you test somebody on their tax skill? What would they be asking you?
So they're technical papers. So there were 4 papers, and I think it's a similar structure now. There's income tax, business tax, capital taxes, which is things like capital gains tax and inheritance tax. And then there's a paper 4, this dreaded paper 4, which is the interaction of the taxes. So paper 4 basically brought all of the various taxes together and basically tested people's ability to look at all the various taxes that are involved in a scenario. And I kept referring on paper 4, which basically meant that each time I had to take that paper 4 again, I had to learn the whole syllabus because that could include anything to do with tax. It could have stuff to do with income tax. It could have stuff to do with business tax or capital taxes. So it was the worst paper to refer on, and I referred on it twice. But I eventually, in November '93, I eventually passed it. So, I was fed up with exams by then, and actually I'd worked out that tax advisory was quite a lucrative area to be qualified in anyway, and a lot of chartered accountants ended up being tax advisors. So I think, well, why do I need to do the chartered accountancy bit as well? So that was the sort of start really of how I got into tax.
And then you set up your own practice. What's the story there? What made you want to set up your own practice?
Well, just necessity. I having lost my job and the company folding, and a group of consultants that were with the firm that folded encouraged me to set up on my own.
No, not the tax advice practice. I mean the actual accounting practice.
Sorry. Okay, so we fast forward from 2004 to the sort of mid-teens, where more and more people that I was giving tax advice to wanted me to help with their tax returns and to help with their company's accounts. And now I could sense that there was this demand for not only giving the tax advice, but sort of implementing that by way of completing the accounts and making sure they were completed in the correct way, having done the tax planning. And so I thought, well, maybe I'm missing out on something here. And so I decided to set up Optimum Tax and Accounting, which is the accountancy arm of the business. And interestingly, that's actually outgrown the tax advisory side. So from a turnover perspective, it's probably something like 2/3 accounting and 1/3 tax advisory,
Mm.
At
which
that
is,
point, oh, sorry.
I was
At
just going to
that
say,
point,
which is a nice mix. You've got
yeah.
that regular recurring income
Yep.
from the accounting side, annual accounts, annual tax returns, and then you've just got a nice, very profitable area of tax planning, which I sort of think of as the jam on top of the bread and butter. So
Mm.
yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, at that point, you probably decided you want to start hiring people to help you with the accounting. What was that process like? Your first
Yeah,
few
so
hires?
yeah, that was interesting. So I kind of I started. I always had an assistant, and then I started, needing to kind of outsource the accounting function. So I started with, self-employed bookkeepers and people like that, and then I decided that actually, I really need to actually employ people rather than contract it out. I started with because I wanted uh, to be quite flexible about things, and I wasn't sure whether I could employ people full time. So I started with what happened to be hardworking mums. So a lot of returning to work mums who just
Mm.
wanted to do maybe 3 days a week, and not necessarily full days. So
Mm.
maybe 9 till 3, so that they could go and do the
Mm.
school run. And it worked well for them. It worked well for me because I didn't have that really big sort of chunky payroll cost, and they had the flexibility they wanted to help with their families. So it kind of started like that, but more recently it's grown where we've needed to look at further afield. So we've now engaged people in India to do a lot of our accounts work.
Martin, what on the so you started off doing some sort of you brought some people in, but they were their own independent consultant, freelance bookkeepers, and then you wanted to bring in people not necessarily full time, but who are in house.
Hmm.
What was the story there? What made you want to make that move? What's the difference between having somebody in house versus somebody who's, say, a freelancer? What's the experience like working with a freelancer versus somebody in house?
I just think that they're just more engaged, and they're more kind of on the same page
Yeah.
with you, and they will tend to just go the extra mile, for you.
Mm.
Whereas I think sometimes the subcontractors, just don't quite have the same, um, the same sort of keenness to help the business.
Mm.
I've always run a very attractive bonus system for my staff. We do quarterly bonuses based on profits, and so I think people are very much engaged and commercial and want to do the best for the firm as a result. Whereas maybe contracted staff are not sort of in the same league really.
What kind of values do you look for in your employees?
So I think the reason we've been so successful, particularly during and since COVID, is our level of service. So we go the extra mile for our clients, and so what I'm looking for with people is people who, not necessarily looking at their watch and wanting to get going at the end of the day. If they've got some work to do, or if a client has phoned up with a problem, that they will just go that extra mile. And we've set ourselves apart through our service levels. So we won a lot of new clients during COVID, where a lot of people were coming to us saying, look, Martin, I just can't get hold of my accountant, and I think he's sunning himself in the garden somewhere, and can you help me? And whilst we weren't necessarily all in the office all the time, we had all of our phones. The landline phone for work was diverted to mobiles, so you could press 1 for Emily, press 2 for Nikki, press 3 for Martin. So we were always available, and I think we won a lot of new work during COVID, and ever since then, that the word has got around that we do go the extra mile, that we're very much service driven. We're very tax driven as well. So I think the combination of the two, if you've got someone that's really kind of working hard for you, going the extra mile, and they really want to save tax for you and help you keep more of the revenues you're generating, is quite a powerful combination. And since COVID, and actually during COVID, our fee income's grown at around 20% per annum, which has been pretty phenomenal. And I think it's been hard work, I think, because it takes you by surprise. I've asked a lot of my staff at times, and it is hard, and but they've always stepped up to the plate and delivered. So we don't advertise, we don't do any marketing. We just get a constant stream of referrals from existing happy clients, and so. And that is purely because of the service that we provide.
I can tell from your background, because you came from tax advice in your accounting firm, it's very people focused. It seems like you're very present with your clients and you're consistently giving them advice, hence why they would end up referring you to their other friends as well.
Yeah.
It seems very people driven.
Yeah, I think, and if you look at the client profile that I've got, it's all small owner managed businesses. They're all going through a similar journey to what I went through, where you're working hard, you're working in a regime where there's a lot of taxation, and I empathize fully with them, and so I'm really on board with trying to help them be as tax efficient and organized as possible. So some entrepreneurs and business owners out there, they're just working so hard, and I just feel people in this country, we don't kind of reward that enough. People that are setting out on their own, they are, small businesses are the biggest employer in the country, and yet we seem to really kind of beat them up with any sort of tax legislation and red tape, etc. And so, if I can do a little bit to help.
It's a very daunting thing to set up your own business, like an incredibly daunting thing. And the more you do it, the more you get into it, the more you realize how little you know about the law, about what needs to be done with employment, what you can and can't do with your money. It's really, really difficult. I found in my own life that it's not easy. And I think in the last year, it's really come out, just how much help you need. And if you set the right foundations, it does pay dividends for 10, 20, 30 years on. But that first initial year, 2 years, 3 years, it's really hard. And I think the way you describe it, as particularly here, we're not encouraging people to be entrepreneurial. We don't encourage people to think big or to take risks. We almost want to slice them down and be like, no, don't go for it. I think one of the best examples I've seen in my own life is the difference between the UK and America. Is in America, you come up with an idea and the response generally is, why not? Whereas in the UK, the response is, why? And you can see that, and I've seen that in my own life.
Yeah, I mean, listening to a book at the moment called Mindset, and, there are two mindsets, aren't there? There's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset.
Yeah.
And I think, there are more people in America of a growth mindset. So, I think that's a fair reflection of a lot of the situation in the UK. But there are some really good, hardworking entrepreneurial people in the UK, and they're just the sort of people that I want to help. I mean, you talk about setting up a business being very daunting, and it is, but when I set my business up, we didn't have AI or anything like that. I mean, my understanding is you can use agents now to set up a business, so you could say it's kind of got a bit easier in that respect, despite all the red tape. There are these tools that you've got now to really help you establish a new company.
Well, talk to us about tools then. So what from your perspective, how has technology changed in your space?
Oh wow! I mean, when I first started working in the late '80s, early '90s,
Yeah.
everything was written down.
Yeah.
The only thing we had from a sort of automated perspective was clients who had large investment portfolios. We had this, God, I can remember the name of the software. It's called DataSolve, which was basically that you inputted onto a system what shareholdings they had
Yeah.
and how many shares they had, and it would spew out, what dividends they would have received during the year. That was about the only automated thing. The rest of the time it was literally handwriting entries onto a tax return. And then I guess then we sort of move into the early '90s, and we started having these great big chunky computers on our desks, and we had this thing called email, and that was so before that it was someone would come around in the morning with your post. They'd have sorted the post, and you'd have 5 or 6 letters to deal with in that day. Now we've got 50 to 100 emails every day to deal with. So we've got 50 to 100 bits of paper effectively arriving on our desk every day, haven't we? So it's crazy
how the world has gone. Like once upon a time, if you got an email, you'd be like, "Oh, it's an email! Wow, so exciting!" And you get tons of letters, and you're like, "Oh, it's a letter." But now you get hundreds of emails, and you're like, "Oh, it's an email." But if you get a letter, you're like, "Wow, I got a letter!" It feels
especially
so
if it's handwritten.
Exactly.
Luckily, HMRC don't forget about us, and they do send us lots of letters, so we do still get plenty of posts from them. But it's just. It is crazy how that all changed during the '90s, and suddenly we started getting some fairly sophisticated accounting software and tax return software. So suddenly we were doing tax returns and accounts using software, not quill and ink, and and things did develop and move very rapidly.
Are there any tools which feel irreplaceable right now? Or do they still feel quite, it's just change, different, like emails, letter, the same thing, just different?
Yeah, I think there will always be, there's always going to be accounting software. How clever it gets with AI, I don't know. Will it be able to literally just scan a whole load of documents and then just create a set of accounts based on its view of those figures, that you've put in front of it. I don't think so, but because it's a question of that would be garbage in, garbage out. What are you actually putting in front of it? I don't know where AI will go. We've got this Making Tax Digital now, where people in certain categories have got to file quarterly tax returns.
Yep.
Which is going to be quite onerous on a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there that they're really not used to this sort of thing of having to do stuff on a regular quarterly basis. So there's a whole big population of people now having to really get quite automated in how they do things. But yeah, it's interesting times with AI, where accounting might go. But I don't think we're always going to have this situation where we're going to have to file accounts and we're going to have to file tax returns. And I found myself in a very lucky industry where you have repeat work. What other industry is there where you have to do something on an annual basis like this? And I have to pinch myself sometimes, to work where you've literally got new work recurring because of how we do things, how we how we do annual accounts and how we do annual tax returns. And basically, if you couple that with high levels of service and proactive tax advice, you've got a very powerful model. I think and I'm very lucky to have built a business in that sort of environment.
Have you seen any new piece of technology more recently that has either scared you or excited you?
Well, there's these people that are doing this weird onboarding software for us, which, that's a bit scary how that all works.
Well, talk to us about your onboarding. What's onboarding like for you? How, from first inquiry to first invoice, walk us through that process.
Yeah, so it's probably one of the clunkiest sort of bits of business, if not within the accountancy sector, but also probably in all sectors. I mean, what other sectors are there where you literally have to give your inside leg measurement when you're transferring your affairs from one advisor or accountant to another?
Yeah.
It really is a clunky process, and even changing banks now has become quite seamless, hasn't it?
Yeah.
They'll move all your standing orders and your direct debits across to the new bank, and suddenly you're operating with a new bank. It really is a clunky
What's the
part.
clunkiest part? What's the most painful?
I guess it's probably it's securing professional clearance from
Yeah.
the previous advisor and getting all of the information that you then need to seamlessly start working on that client's affairs. There's also the AML, the anti-money laundering checks, which seem to have become more and more onerous over the years. So it used to be just a question of collecting the client's passport and a recent utility bill, just to make sure that they're a real person. But now you've got to look at source of funds and any politically exposed connections, and it's really is quite hard work to take on a new client. And I can kind of understand how some accountants literally don't even like taking on new clients because it is so difficult. But as I see it, it's one of those painful things you've got to go through to then get that recurring income. If you really want to build that recurring income, you've just got to go through the pain. And if you want to help those people, and it's something you've got to go through. But we've got a good team that are they keep plugging away when we get a new client. They keep plugging away at getting that over the line and getting it through. And of course, we're experimenting with some interesting new software.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to try and make everything a bit more automated, less people involved.
Yeah.
And to try and let systems be working away in the background while we carry on with our day work.
Yeah.
To be honest, in our own experience, we have yet to come across anybody in the space who has a seamless onboarding process, with the exception of one
person
who does his entire onboarding in person, which is fine. I mean, if that's your cup of tea, it works. But everyone else who we have worked with has never. We haven't come across anybody who says, "Oh, onboarding, yes,
it's
great."
always come with a onboarding.
Yeah, it's very, very
we found
painful.
the main points are like visibility. There's not much of a client profile. It takes too long to get the accounting software up and running with all the client information. So it does seem like a massive pain point when it comes
I
to
feel like visibility is the clearest one.
Yeah.
Because 9 times out of 10, it's often stuck in one person's head. It could be the operations manager, it could be the director, but it's stuck in one person's head. So when that person's not around, all of a sudden onboarding stops. And that's very painful.
Yeah, it is. And it's frustrating because you want to get to work on those clients. You want to start helping them. You want to bring them up to date if they've fallen behind. And you kind of you feel like a greyhound in a trap, wanting to get going and get working, and you can't. But yeah, I'm sure that you guys are going to help us get that more automated and get it slicker, and help us reduce. We're going to look at getting a KPI together for our average onboarding time and see if we can work towards halving that in the coming months. So that would be a neat thing to be able to achieve in the next quarter.
Yeah. I think what makes it even more special is that if you can minimize the amount of time it takes you, because onboarding is a two-way street. There's what you have to do and then there's what the client has to do. And if you can minimize the amount of time it takes you to complete your part, often the client work is outside of your control. Some clients are immediately responsive, done and dusted. Some, for a variety of reasons, are just very slow, which is fine. But if you can minimize your part, that's a fantastic KPI to go after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And, the quicker you can get them on board, the quicker you can start earning fees and the quicker you
Yeah.
can start helping them
So what
to.
does that look like for that KPI? How are you going to track it? What measurements are you going to use?
I think literally, I guess it's from, saying hello to the potential new client to starting to be able to work on them and earn fees from them. That's that period that's become over the years quite a long period now, whereas it used to feel like it was only maybe a week or something like that. It seems to be, sometimes it's going on for a month maybe
Yeah.
of information gathering and
Yeah.
getting them properly onboarded.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess, if we could get back to the old days of getting it all done within a week, that would be an amazing place to be.
That would be an amazing
That would
place
be
to be.
amazing.
That's what's exciting you. Is there anything that
Scares you. I mean, when we talk to accountants in general, there is a general theme of a bit worried about data security or excitement as well as fear. So what would you say the
is there
common
anything
theme
that
is?
keeps you up?
Yeah.
So I think, we don't really know where AI is going, do we, with the service sector generally. I think a lot of solicitors have got concerns about people using AI to create their own legal documents and that sort of thing. But how do you replicate an accountant? I mean, that's just let alone a proactive tax advisor. I think it's quite an exciting time. I'm approaching my 60th birthday, believe it or not, and I think
don't believe
AI,
Yeah.
I think
No.
AI has given me a new lease of life, I think, in a way, because it's almost like you've got an assistant on your desk that
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
literally help you. I'm not talking about giving advice, but it's perhaps backing up
Yeah.
thoughts that you've got, something to run past.
Did you feel the same when the internet really started taking off? I guess what I'm trying to understand is, what was the experience like when we had a similar groundbreaking experience such as the internet? Like, the internet would be the equivalent of creating a whole new world. Digital, yes, but it's a whole new world. In the same way we have a physical shop, now we have another shop, but it just so happens to be on a screen. Completely groundbreaking, nothing like it. The equivalent would be like a telephone, for example, or maybe a plane. Do you feel like that with AI, or do you feel like it's a bit different? Do you feel like this one is even more special?
I think, with the internet, I think there was a lot of fun to be had from a personal level about the internet, and it was probably less about work. Whereas I think AI, it feels it's more about how is this going to help people at work. So my memories of the early internet was things like, Friends Reunited and Facebook, and it was more about what you could achieve from it from a personal perspective, not so much from a work, because work was work. That just carried on. But suddenly we had this distraction in the internet. Suddenly you could buy things off the internet, or you could find long lost friends on the internet and that sort of thing. It wasn't really so much about work, but
that's so interesting. I've never thought about it from that perspective.
So
That's
would
a
you
really good
think
point.
that it's disrupting the working world or accounting, if it's not as much of a distraction?
So I think people should be thinking that AI can enhance how they deliver their service. That I think it's going to be really powerful for us, and I think people that don't sort of grasp it early on are going to fall behind a lot.
Yeah. On the AI for personal, I thought that contrast you drew between the internet was fun. The AI feels like it's a productivity tool. Do you use AI in your personal life?
Yeah,
Do you use it for anything fun related? A good example is like we're tinkering with a computer, like an agent with its own sort of hardware. It would be the equivalent of a robot. It's just a fun little project that we're doing on the side. But I agree with you. We almost exclusively use AI from a productivity lens. and we probably about 10% of the time think, what fun things could we do with it? I mean, I haven't created any videos, haven't done any art, I haven't made any music. In theory, I could do all of this with AI, but I haven't done anything like that. Have you done anything like that?
So, just like, for example, coming here today, I knew it was, so I've come into Waterloo, and I knew that it was near a London Bridge, and I didn't really know where it was. So I just put into Copilot, what's the best way of getting me from London Waterloo to, forgotten the name of the road?
Jamaica Road.
Yeah, where we are. And it came up with all these. I know you can use Google Maps and that sort of thing, but it's kind of, well, why do you even need to go into Google Maps? There's tools now where you can, I don't know, just talk to it almost like a personal assistant. What's the best way of doing this? What's the best way of doing that? So I think it's just so interesting. It's so useful. Instead of having to visit various websites for various bits of information, this is just, it's bringing it all together and just making it all so much quicker and more, holistic, really.
I think
Feels
that's
like knowledge is at fingertips.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So what we are experiencing is, for the first time, we're not automating a task, we're automating intelligence. And that's this is what makes me so excited and also a bit uneasy about the whole experience, because once you're automating intelligence, like when we went to Accountex yesterday, one of the speakers was, talking about her entrepreneurial boss, and he had created 50 agents to do a variety of tasks, and then created 25 other agents to review the work that the 50 agents had done. Okay. So it was AI reviewing AI. And it was in that moment that it became apparent. She used the example of, like, once upon a time we used to have calculators. We used to, do calculations, then somebody came along and invented a calculator. It didn't change the fact that we still had to do calculations. Fine, that's true. But that's still a task. Whereas now we are automating intelligence. That example, my apologies, that example that you just referenced, that's intelligence. That's you having to take multiple pieces of information, put together a clear plan. That does feel a bit uneasy.
But does it? Because like you said with the calculator, yes, you could sit down and write it with hand, but we'd never get as much research or innovation we would if we didn't have a calculator.
That's true.
It just speeds up all the potentials that we could potentially reach to.
Yeah.
Research, new technologies.
The straitjacket we've got is that we are, we're bound by legislation, etc. So we have got that straitjacket that you've always got to refer back to and sense check. So anything, if you're thinking about using AI to give advice and things like that, I think you've really got to be careful, because you don't know where all this information is being sourced from. But I think what a really powerful combination is someone who's been qualified in tax for 33 years, got 33 years of experience using or helping, being helped with AI.
Yeah.
That you've got that experience coupled with this amazing speedy tool that's doing such quick research, that as someone with 33 years experience, I know when something looks wrong or just doesn't look right. So it's a really nice combination. As I said, I'm coming up to my 60th birthday, but I'm so excited about the next 5 years, because, a lot of people are sort of thinking about, putting their feet up and doing crosswords and, going fishing or something, by my age. But I'm just so excited to be part of this new chapter, with AI, and I want to, be a part of it and enjoy it. And as I say, I think it's given me a new lease of life.
What would be the dream? So imagine you had a magic wand, Martin, and you could do anything you want with AI for the business. What would that look like? And I'll give you an example. I've always thought to myself, could there be a way for me to have a meeting with somebody, whether it's online or offline, and then have that recorded in the most secure and private way possible, document it into like a home server, and I want it to come back and tell me like, how did that conversation go with Martin, on the 14th of May on Tuesday, or on Thursday, how did that go? And then I want it to recall that without me ever having to do any of that work. and I could be able to like project it onto a screen. That for me would be like a dream if I could do
Iron
that.
Man.
Iron Man, exactly, like kind of like Iron Man. That would be like a great example of what I would want the future to look like. What would that look like for you?
So I think, you're right too. I think the recording of meetings, that again, a clunky thing is, we always used to write down notes of meeting, and then, that then had to be relayed to the team so that they were kind of on board with what was happening with that new client or existing client.
Yeah.
And now we've got things like Fathom and other systems where, it's being recorded and interpreted and put into notes, which is going to just save a lot of time. And I think that's really, that could be really powerful. And not only does it save time, but it can feed that information to the team very quickly. They can get very quickly on board with, what is this new client, what's their background, and, what things are we going to be doing for them. So the excitement for me really is to speed up that period from meeting the client and then implementing what they want implemented and what's good for them. So I think it's just going to make things faster so we can get things in place for clients a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And I think, we're the victims of our own success in a lot of ways. We're very busy, and it does take a lot of time sometimes to put some of these things in place for clients because we are so busy.
It takes such a long time. I think, so like in the 90s, we saw a crazy period of globalization. I feel like that's starting to shift now, where more and more businesses are trying to understand where their data sits. And an example of a meeting that you have, that's your data. You want to know where that sits. And I find more and more companies are interested in having their own system. Whereas like previously in the 90s, you would be like, okay, who can I outsource this to so they can look after? I don't want to have to deal with it. I feel like we're now coming full circle, where businesses are like, where can I store my data? And I know it belongs to me. It doesn't go anywhere else. It's completely secure. Have you considered that for Optimum? Have you thought about what your future technology stack could look like? And if you have, what does that look like?
I think, we're just starting this ride, and I think we're kind of, we're just seeing where it all goes. I kind of, we're just sort of getting used to having this sort of technology available to us and just seeing where it goes. And I think that, one of the dangers of having someone as old as me in a company is that perhaps we're not always the most ready to, look at new technologies and that sort of, let alone use them.
I'd like to challenge that.
Yeah.
You seem the most open to talk about how to implement new technology compared to a lot of other people we've spoken to.
Okay. I mean, I don't really know what the attitude is out there. I mean, I suppose there are, I suppose the image of a lot of accountants is that they are slightly resistant to change. They kind of are very cautious, and things like recording meetings and things like that. You can imagine some not being, comfortable with that. But I know that it's the future, and I know that if we don't embrace it and enhance it, we're going to get left behind. And for me, it's all about how can we best deliver the service to our clients. Do our clients really want us to be fumbling around, wasting time and not getting stuff implemented for them as quickly as possible? No, they don't. So I think it's just another piece of the jigsaw that's going to help us to really give clients what they want.
Which, let's talk about that, and let's talk about that in a bit more detail. So what really matters to your clients? I mean, a few things immediately appear to me. Speed, of course, that's very important. If somebody's asking for some help, they want a swift response. What else do you try and focus on to deliver that service? And more importantly, what technologies would you think about deploying more recently that can help you do that?
So I think, probably availability. I think a lot of people, whatever means they use, whether they want to pick the phone up or email or WhatsApp, whatever it is, they just want to have an answer. They've got a problem and they just want a quick answer. And so I think any systems that are going to enhance our ability to be available and respond quickly are going to be very useful. I mean, maybe we build up a bank of frequently asked questions,
Yeah.
and maybe there's a nice friendly face when one of the team is, we've got a recording of them explaining something to a client, so we know this query comes in from a client, and we can send them a link to something where Emma or Nikki or whoever kind of explains it nicely to them, and then we can be helping more clients in volume
Yeah.
rather than in real time. So
Yeah, I really like the way you put that availability, because time is the biggest resource, and that's what people want. They want a bit of your time. And instead of saying something like good customer service, which is usually the most cheesiest answer when it comes to what's a great relationship with your client, availability is where it all comes back down to.
And intimacy.
Yeah.
I think that's what your unfair advantage is. In our own experience with you, you are, not to sound weird, but very intimate.
Okay.
And it does matter because, like, if you're having a conversation with somebody, you want to know that you're present. You
You're
want to know they're
comfortable.
listening, and that you feel comfortable, they feel comfortable. And if you can think of ways to make your technology, your business, your service intimate, it works very well. I think most people, that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
I think knowing your client is very important. Knowing them well. To give the best advice, you need to
Yeah.
know them very well. So I'm glad that you feel that that there's an intimate relationship there, because we're helping with your money, and money is important to everyone, and so having a good deep knowledge of your clients, I think, is very important. When new clients come to us, quite often I question them on what had gone wrong before. Why have you decided to leave your they may have been with an accountant for 10 years, 15 years or whatever, and the same thing comes back every time, is I just couldn't get hold of him or her, and by the time I got hold of them, it was too late. Or my year end had gone past and I'd missed an opportunity, and so I think it is being available, and that's the hard, one of the hard things for me is spreading myself around. There's lots of people that want a piece of me and want to talk to me, and I really want to be available for people. So the more I can automate the bits and pieces, the stuff,
The admin.
the admin, basically,
Yeah.
the implementation of stuff, the more I can then be available to actually have meetings with clients and give them some of my time and thoughts, thinking about their scenarios and thinking about the best tax arrangement for them.
What are some unique and interesting ways you have, some unique and interesting approaches you've taken to reducing your admin?
Well, it's all about letting go of stuff. I mean, I recently listened to Buy Back Your Time with by Dan Martell, and it's all about being able to trust people around you, or find people around you to do some of the things that not only you can do. So in an ideal world, I would just be doing the things that only I can do, and if there's anything that I'm doing that actually someone else could be doing, that it doesn't need Martin to do that. And that's the ideal scenario, is that there's people around me that can do that, and that's where I'm working towards. I'm building a good team that can start doing the stuff for me. And I think probably if I had my time again, I would have started that process earlier.
I mean, we're coming up to the hour now, so help us help us understand, if you could, if you had our audience in front of you. We've spoken about your story, how you started off with tax advice. You had a very painful experience, I can imagine, of uncertainty for 3 months. I'm sure your wife put a lot of pressure on you as well. I can't imagine what that must have felt like. And now today you sit with us running a successful business, growing, clients are incredibly happy, open to technology. What are the key takeaways you've had over the last 20 years that you could impart on our audience, specifically when it comes to business? What are the things, the mistakes you made? I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about, you found it hard to let go. Outside of that, what other things could you share with them that could potentially help them? Not necessarily advice, but lessons you've taken away in your own life that have helped you and that may be insightful for them.
Yeah, so ultimately it comes down to having the right people on the bus.
Yeah,
and
the relationships.
Having good people around you, growth-minded people, positive people, people who won't be offended if you correct them on something or encourage them to do something in another way. People that want to learn, so people that want to come on the journey with you and learn. And I think that if you're not spotting that early on in your engagement with them, whether they're an employee or a contractor or whoever, if you're not spotting that growth mindset with them, then I think you should part company with them. And I think a lot of companies carry a lot of people that they shouldn't really be on the bus. And if they are on the bus, they're not in the right seat. So I think that would be my advice. I think letting go more, trust more, and invest in people more. So, really give them the tools, give them the power to start to be able to help you more. I think a lot of people find it hard to relinquish control.
Yeah.
And but I think you have to do that if you want to build and develop a team. You have to do that.
When was that moment for you when you realized you needed to let go more?
I remember when I went to Thailand for I was a best man at a wedding in Thailand.
It always starts in Thailand.
2023. And just the day before I left, I was a 3-week holiday, and the day before I left, a key member of staff left, handed a notice in, and so I had one day to deal with that, and then they would have worked out their notice halfway through my holiday. So I suddenly had this big gap. And I think when I came back from holiday, the two that were remaining in the office, they'd reorganized the office, they'd moved my desk, and they just said, "Martin, we're going to get through this." And it was just fantastic, because when I came back from holiday, I was so daunted by what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And they were just fantastic, and they really, really helped me. And I think it's having people like that, that really that are watching your back and really want the best for the company. And you're talking about the right people on the bus. The lady that left, she wasn't the right person. She shouldn't have been on the bus, and it was actually a relief that she'd left. But to have that support when I came back from holiday was just amazing. And I think if you can have people like that around you in your organization, it's going to be really helpful.
Relationships.
Yeah. But treat people well, and they'll want to work hard for you. I've always treated people well. I've always tried to be flexible.
Yeah.
With any work arrangements. If people have wanted holiday at short notice, I've always tried to be flexible for them.
Yeah.
And but they pay you back. If they're the right sort of growth-minded people, they will pay you back.
Yeah. I relate to that.
Yeah.
I'm finding more and more that it's about relationships. Again and again, whether you're an accountant, whether you work in tech, whether you work as a hairdresser, whether you work as a construction worker, everything boils down to the relationships that you have.
And this is where AI will fail, isn't it? Because you need those interpersonal relationships ultimately with an organization, and AI doesn't necessarily give you that.
It doesn't. And I think from the audience's perspective, one area that I can share with them that I've learned recently is AI is really data rich, like really data rich, but it's incredibly context poor. It does not understand. It can read all the books, but it can't read the room. And humans are the exact opposite. We are very data poor. We have not a lot of information up here, but we are incredibly context rich. We can spot things that most people won't be able to catch on to very, very quickly. And the core of that is just relationships. What is a relationship except context? You know, the way you speak to your friend is not how you speak to, you know, a stranger. The way you speak to a stranger is not how you speak to your family. It all boils down to relationships.
Yeah. And, you know, and it's the clients as well, you know, having a good relationship with them, knowing what they want from an advisor, knowing what they want from life, and see if you can help them, you know, help them with that.
Thank you,
This
Martin.
has been a great
I've
session.
really enjoyed the
Thank you.
session. What a wonderful,
Yeah.
what a wonderful last hour.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
it's
much.
amazing.
Thank you
very
for
much.
having me.
Okay, we'll wrap up there.